Good afternoon. I'm Rich Whitney, Green Party candidate for governor of Illinois, and this is the Green Party response to the State of the State address given by Governor Quinn today. I must confess that I wrote this statement before listening to Governor Quinn's State of the State address today. That's because we don't need the incumbent governor to tell us what the state of the state is. We all know what it is. We're living in it. In a word, it's dismal. Just yesterday, the Illinois Manufacturers Directory announced the state's manufacturing industry suffered one of the worst declines in nearly a century between November 2008 and November 2009, with 51,925 industrial jobs lost and 709 manufacturing companies shut down in Illinois during that period. The biggest surprise there to me is that we still had that many manufacturing jobs to lose. Official unemployment is now at 11%, and we all know that the real unemployment rate is far higher. Our state government is almost completely dysfunctional. Our college and university system is in dire straits, and struggling students and parents are going to end up paying more and taking on even more debt to receive a lower quality of education. State workers are facing layoffs, furloughs, or other cutbacks, or higher workloads. Social service agencies, hospitals, and healthcare clinics are in critical condition, and the agencies and facilities needed to serve the elderly, veterans, children, the physically and mentally challenged are being gutted or forced to close. Our school districts, county, and local governments are all struggling from the loss of state money and their own shrinking tax base, forcing a choice between loss of jobs and services or higher property or sales taxes. And this is happening in a state that today provides the lowest percentage of its school funding from state sources in the United States, has the most unequal schools in the United States, and the most underfunded pension system in the United States. Yet our incumbent legislators won't fix the problem, even though it is well known that the state cannot continue to function without some type of major tax reform. We know what the main cause of the budget crisis is. We have one of the most regressive tax systems in the United States, placing most of the burden on those least able to pay. We know what the answers are. We need a major tax reform that will reduce our reliance on property and sales taxes, shift the burden to the income tax, lower the burden on lower and middle income wage earners, guarantee adequate state funding for our schools, and raise enough revenue to provide the services that people need. Yet instead of recognizing what most of the people realize needs to be done and fixing the problem, most of them lack the political will to do what is right and instead do what is expedient, what their paymasters want. The only things that they agree are politically safe to do, even though they are wrong, are the very things that ensure that the crisis will be even harder to solve in the future. More borrowing, more delayed payments, more fund sweeps and one-time gimmicks, more reliance on alcohol, tobacco, and gambling taxes, and more deterioration of education and services. The recently enacted campaign finance reform, while better than nothing, doesn't go nearly far enough to put an end to legalized corruption or illegal patronage, and will mainly keep in place a system that ensures that the big corporate and bank donors and the big party bosses will continue to control these legislators and executive officers, at least as long as these legislators and officers continue to come from the two corporate-sponsored parties. And that's the other real aspect of the real state of the state that we, the people, must come to grips with. It is a product of the stranglehold on government by the Democratic and Republican parties, the parties that brought us the last two elected governors, one a felon, the other removed from office in disgrace, and who, even now, can't keep his foot out of his mouth. But those are just two symptoms of a much deeper disease. The state of the state that I've just described is the product of 7 years of nearly total control of the state of Illinois, both legislative and executive branches, by the Democratic Party. It's not about personalities. I believe that Pat Quinn and Dan Hines are both personally good people. They probably mean well. They may be the very best that the Democratic Party has to offer. But that only further illustrates the problem. Because good intentions or not, they are still prisoners of the same corrupt institution, and we cannot expect real change from them. Not change you can believe in. Quinn spoke today about a green way of thinking and a future green economy, and I applaud him for that. That's probably no accident. Yet in the same breath, he lauded the Capitol bill that he signed that focused far more on the old greenhouse gas promoting technologies of highway expansion and air travel than it did on sustainable transportation. $14.3 billion for roads and bridges, including $4 billion for new roadways, versus less than $7 billion for all rail and only $400 million for high-speed rail, even though every $1 billion spent on rail creates over 7,000 more jobs than $1 billion spent on roads. And the Capitol bill includes $110 million for a Peatone airport that is not needed and that is intended to benefit developers at the expense of rural property owners and the environment. I would suggest to you that if you want to build a genuine green economy, you need to get genuine Greens in government.